The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Javier Gerardo Milei, President of the Argentine Republic. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
A las autoridades de las Naciones Unidas.
To the authorities of the United Nations, representatives of the various countries, member countries, and all of the citizens of the world that are watching us, good afternoon. For those of you who are not aware, I'm not a politician. I'm an economist. I'm a liberal, libertarian economist who never aimed to be a politician, but who was honored to become the President of the Republic of Argentina following the resounding failure of more than a century of collectivist policies that destroyed our country. This is my first speech to the United Nations General Assembly, and I'd like to take this opportunity to humbly alert the different nations of the world about the path that we are moving down and have been for decades, and about the danger that of this organization failing, as it has been doing in its original mission. I haven't come here to tell the world what it should be doing. I've come here to tell the world, on the one hand, what will happen if the United Nations continues to promote collectivist policies that it's been promoting under the mantle of the 2030 Agenda, and on the other hand, the values of the new Argentina. I want to begin by giving credit where credit's due. The United Nations was born out of the horror of the cruelest war in global history, and the main aim of it was to ensure that it never happened again. To do so, the organization engraved its fundamental principles in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. From that was born a basic agreement around one maxim, that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Under the watch of this organization, the adoption of this and the adoption of these ideas, over the last 70 years, humanity has experienced the longest period of global peace in history, which has coincided with the greatest period of economic growth in history. It established an international forum in which nations can resolve their conflicts through cooperation rather than resorting instantaneously to weapons, and it achieved something previously unthinkable: to sit the 5 great powers of the world around one same table with the same veto power, despite having completely counterposed interests. All of this didn't mean that the scourge of war disappeared, but it did, at least for now, ensure that no conflict has escalated to global proportions. The result was that we moved from having 2 world wars in less than 40 years, which together claimed more than 120 million lives, to having 70 consecutive years of relative global peace and security and stability under the mantle of an order which allowed the entire world to be integrated commercially, to compete and to prosper. Because where trade enters, we don't have bullets, said Bastiat, because trade guarantees peace, peace guarantees, and freedom guarantees trade. Equality before the law guarantees freedom. It managed to ensure what Prophet Isaiah said, that he will judge between the nations and will settle disputes for many peoples. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore. This is what's happened mainly under the watch of the United Nations in its first few decades. That's why we're talking about an outstanding success in the history of nations that has been achieved by the United Nations, and it cannot be overlooked. Now, at some time, and as often happens with the majority of bureaucratic structures that are created by men, this organization stopped looking after its main aims set out in its founding declaration and started to change. This was an organization that had essentially been thought up as a shield to protect the reign of men, and it became a leviathan with various tentacles purporting to decide not only what not only what each nation state should do, but also how all the citizens in the world should live. That's how we moved from being an organisation that pursued peace to an organisation that imposes an ideology on its members about an endless list of topics in society. The model of the United Nations that had been successful, the origin of which we can see in the ideas of President Wilson, who talked about the need for peace without victory, and that was founded out of cooperation from nation states, has been abandoned. It's been replaced by a model of supranational government, of international bureaucrats that attempt to impose on citizens of the world a specific way of living. What we're discussing in New York this week at the Summit of the Future is nothing more than going further down this tragic path, the tragic path that this institution has adopted. Going further down this path, which in the very words of the Secretary General, calls on us to define a new social contract, redoubling our commitments in the 2030 Agenda. On this, I'd like to be clear about Argentina's position. The 2030 Agenda, although it's well-intentioned in its goals, is nothing but a supranational government program that is socialist in shape. It purports to resolve the problems of modernity with solutions that afflict the sovereignty of nation states and violate the right to life, right to freedom, and property of persons. It's an agenda that purports to resolve poverty, inequality, discrimination with legislation that simply furthers these issues, because the history of the world has shown that the only way of guaranteeing prosperity is by limiting the power of the monarch, by guaranteeing equality before the law, defending the right to life, to freedom, and to the ownership and property of individuals. The adoption of this agenda is fully in line with these privileged interests and looks beyond the principles that were set out in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It has therefore twisted the role of this organization and set it on the wrong course. We've seen how an organization that was born to defend the rights of man has become one of the main proponents of systematic violations of freedom, such as, for instance, the lockdowns imposed in 2020, which should be seen as a crime against humanity. In this same house, that purports to defend human rights, we have also included bloody dictatorships in the Human Rights Council, including Cuba and Venezuela, without reproach. In this same house, which purports to defend the rights of women, we've allowed on CEDAW, the CEDAW Committee, countries that punish their women just for showing their skin. In this same house that had voted against the State of Israel, which is the only country in the Middle East to defend a liberal democracy, we have simultaneously shown a total inability to respond to the scourge of terrorism. On the economic level, we have promoted collectivist policies that undermine economic growth, violate property rights, and disrupt a natural economic process, preventing the most left-behind countries to freely enjoy their own resources. They have imposed regulations and prohibitions specifically because of countries that wish to develop themselves. We have further established a toxic relationship between global governance and international credit bodies, demanding that those countries that are most left behind commit resources that they don't have to programs that they don't need, making them perpetual debtors. We have also seen ridiculous policies with Malthusian stances, such as policies, zero emissions policies that harm all poor countries, policies related to sexual and reproductive rights, when birth rates in Western countries are plummeting, announcing a somber future for all of us. The organization has met its mission of upholding territorial sovereignty of its members. As we know, the Argentines have a first-hand experience of this with the Malvinas Islands. We have also seen that the veto of the permanent members of the Security Council has begun to be used in the defense of the specific interests of a certain few. That's where we are today, with a powerless organization, powerless to provide solutions to the true global conflicts for instance, the aberrant Russian invasion of Ukraine, which has costed the lives of more than 300,000 people and left behind more than 1 million wounded. This is an organization that, rather than tackling these conflicts, invests time and effort in imposing on poor countries how they should and how much they should produce, who they should do relations with, what they should eat, what they should believe in, as the Pact for the Future purports to dictate. This long list of errors and contradictions has led to a loss of credibility for the United Nations before the citizens of the free world. I'd like to issue a warning here. We are coming to the end of a cycle. Collectivism and the moral posturing and the woke agenda is coming up against reality. There are no further credible solutions to the real problems of the world. If the 2030 agenda fails, as recognized by its own promoters, the response should be to wonder whether or not this was an ill-conceived program from the outset. We should accept this reality and change what we're doing. The same thing always happens with ideas that come from the left. They're designing a model in line with what human beings should do, and when individuals freely decide to act otherwise, they have no better solution than to restrict, repress, or cut off their freedom. In Argentina, we've seen with our own eyes what they have done at the end of this path of envy and sad passion, poverty, anarchy, and a total lack of liberty. We still have time to choose another direction. I want to be clear so that there's no poor misunderstanding here. Argentina, that is going through a profound process of change currently, has decided to embrace the ideas of freedom. These are ideas that say that all citizens are born free and equal before the law, that we have inalienable rights granted by our Creator, to life, to freedom, and to property. These principles that are setting the framework of the process of change that we're undertaking in Argentina are also the principles that will guide our international conduct from now on. We believe in the defense of life for all. We believe in the defense of property for all. We believe in freedom of expression for all. We believe in freedom of worship for all. We believe in freedom of trade for all. And we believe in limited government, all. And in these times, what happens in one country has a swift impact on others, and we believe that peoples should be able to live free of tyranny and oppression, be it political oppression, economic slavery, or religious fanaticism. This fundamental idea shouldn't be mere words. It should be supported by our acts diplomatically, economically, and materially through the joint force of all of the countries that stand up for freedom. This doctrine of the new Argentina is no more and no less than the true essence of the United Nations. That is, the cooperation of nations united in the defense of freedom. If the United Nations wants to resume the principles that led to its birth and adopt the role for which it was designed, it can count on the full support of Argentina in its struggle for freedom. You should be aware, though, that Argentina will not support any policy that implies restricting individual or trade freedoms, nor the violation of the natural rights of individuals, regardless of who promotes these or how big the consensus is in this institution. For this reason, I'd like to officially express our dissent on the Pact for the Future that was signed on Sunday, and I invite all nations of the free world to support us, not only in relation to this pact, but also in the establishment of a new agenda for this noble institution, that is, the agenda for freedom. From this day on, you should know that Argentina, the Republic of Argentina, will abandon its policy of historic neutrality and will be on the vanguard in the struggle for the defense of freedom. Because, as Thomas Paine said, those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must, like men, undergo the fatigue of supporting it. Long live freedom, God damn it. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Argentine Republic.